Israel is not the litmus test. How you feel about your own country, what you do to improve or degrade your own country, that's the litmus test for me. I don't know who's writing the rules here, but I'm not obeying them. I'm not attacking Israel. I'm not an anti-Semite. You don't get to kill Christians who have nothing to do with this.
It's time Americans learned what actually happened.
I'm not alleging that they committed 9/11, but I am stating, because it's a fact, that they were aware the hijackers were in the U.S. Even right now, as we speak, the CIA is effectively refusing to release information that they have from 24 years ago. They should be forced at gunpoint to divulge this. I'm not an anti-Semite, obviously. I'm not even anti-Israel. And you're calling me names is not going to stop me, because I don't have to take orders from you about what I'm allowed to know or not know, because it's my country.
Alrighty, guys, buckle up. This one's going to be wild. Right out of the gate, we got Tucker questioning the fictional narrative, 9/11 narrative that we've all been told. He straight up just said that the CIA is withholding information about 9/11 and they should be held at gunpoint to release it. So, I mean, that's a pretty bold statement. Looks like he's pushing back relatively hard, so that's always appreciated. He's insisting that pointing out inconsistencies and lesser known details about 9/11 doesn't make him an anti-Semite or a simp for any other group. It's just about seeking the truth. And that's all we're doing here. We're just asking questions. We just want to know what's actually going on. No harm in that. So, yeah, let's get into it. It's going to be a spicy one.
The biggest dividing line in politics is arguably no longer right or left. Instead, it's a lot to do with trust. There are those who broadly trust our institutions and our experts, and who generally believe in the stories and the mythologies about our history and the events which define it. On the other side of the people who increasingly don't trust any of these things. They see a deep state, a swamp, and a cabal of vested interests who are anything but America first. That dividing line explains a lot about MAGA's division on everything from the Epstein files to US support for Israel's war and the decision to bomb Iran.
Pierce begins by dividing his audience kind of in these two distinct camps, or I guess he's saying people in politics in general, whatever, but that they're moving beyond this traditional left-right split. And he says one group aligns with the institutions that are shaping our lives, think like systems and the people running them, especially within leadership, influencing the world we live in, specifically in the U.S. The other camp sees it all as nonsense, believing these systems are weaponized to silence or control anyone who challenges them. And things like the handling of the Epstein files, the bombing of Iran, and U.S. support for Israel makes this, especially with the stuff going on in Gaza, makes this divide much more apparent, making the lines between these groups clearer than ever.
It's time Americans learned what actually happened. And Tucker Carlson, founder of the Tucker Carlson Network, joins me now. Tucker, welcome back to Uncensored.
Just a heads up for everyone, the video I downloaded has technical issues. Throughout the entire interview, which is over an hour long, it skips 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it because it is from the original video, so they must have had some technical glitches or difficulties when it aired. But I'm going to skip over those. The interview starts with a quick intro where Tucker and Piers greet one another. Then they dive into Tucker's new documentary about 9/11, which its whole aim, from what I understand, is just to highlight inconsistencies in the official narrative. They play a short trailer for the documentary, but I'll skip ahead to the part where Piers asks Tucker about the biggest lies told to the American public about 9/11.
It's a great trailer. What to you, though, Tucker, are the biggest lies perpetrated on the American people from 9/11?
Well, the core lie is the 9/11 Commission itself, which was an instrument, a political instrument of the Bush administration run by a guy called Philip Zelikow. And from beginning to end, he stage managed the explanation for 9/11 in a way that benefited the neoconservative factions within the Bush administration. The point was to leverage the pain and outrage of that day and use it to convince Americans that we ought to invade Iraq, which of course had nothing whatsoever to do with 9/11. And he wrote the commission report with that in mind. And by the way, he wrote it before the investigation took place. He literally sketched it out before they knew what the facts were. And then during the course of the investigation, he systematically, I'm not guessing, by the way, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is the testimony of people who are directly involved in the commission. Chairman Tom Kean, the former governor of New Jersey, Republican governor, he stage managed the entire thing and prevented investigators from looking into like core questions. For example, the CIA was fully aware that many of the hijackers who committed 9/11 were in the United States. They had followed them, as the trailer suggests, around the world. 11 out of the 19 hijackers had visas for travel to the United States issued in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, at exactly the moment that John Brennan was the station chief for the CIA in Saudi Arabia. They knew that they were here. They didn't hide the fact that they were here. I mean, Khalid al-Mihdhar, who was a 26-year-old Saudi, the plane that hit the Pentagon, was in the San Diego phone book, and he was being followed by the CIA. I mean, this is all documented. And not just by the CIA, by foreign intel services, probably the British, possibly the French, definitely the Israelis. They knew. Now, I'm not alleging that they committed 9/11, but I am stating, because it's a fact, that they were aware the hijackers were in the U.S. and were planning a terror attack against the United States, and they never passed that information to the FBI, to local police, much less to the American public, and 3,000 people died as a result. So what is that?
Piers asked Tucker Carlson to name the biggest lies surrounding 9/11, and Tucker's response was pretty straightforward. It says the 9/11 Commission itself, set up by the Bush administration, was the primary tool for spreading false information and misleading the public. He pointed to Philip Zilkow, the head of the 9/11 Commission, and Tucker basically accuses him of orchestrating a very carefully crafted narrative. And also, according to Tucker, this narrative was designed to justify the U.S. invasion of Iraq, a country with no connection to 9/11. Tucker also says Zilkow's management blocked investigators from digging into critical details like the hijackers, who were tracked long before entering the U.S. So he raises some key questions, and he's saying, why didn't the government share this information with agencies like the FBI, which could have stopped the attack and saved thousands of lives? So, I mean, these are good questions. I'm interested to see what Piers has to say. I know he's going to provide some pushback, so let's see what he has to say.
Huge parts of the 9/11 story were left out of the commission report. For example, what happened to Building 7?
Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself. I thought that Piers would have responded right then, but Tucker seems to be going on, and now he's getting into Building 7. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Building 7, but this is definitely going to get interesting. So I'm going to just keep listening, and then I'll probably chime in once Piers responds.
Which was not only not next to the Twin Towers, which are hit by airplanes, but had a building in between itself and those buildings, collapsed that afternoon for reasons that no one has been able to explain since. You're not a lunatic for asking. There is no there's no plausible explanation for how that building collapsed.
Well, so let's talk
That's
about
not
that.
even mentioned.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment,
Yes.
because it's one of the many things that have raged since. If you look into the investigation into Tower 7, the findings of the investigation into it were that the North Tower, when it came down, had set off a load of fires in Building 7. And it was a steel structure and shouldn't have gone down, but it did. That these fires burned all afternoon, and I think it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something, the tower eventually gave way to the welter of fires raging inside it. And it was the only time that had happened to a structure that was built in that way. However, there has been another tower very similar to that in structure, which has since gone down in Tehran. So it's no longer the only one. In other words, there is another example of a tower like that collapsing.
All right, so Piers brought up something intriguing about Building 7's collapse on 9/11. He's claiming there's been a similar incident since. One that I've personally never heard of. So being curious, I asked Grok a couple straightforward questions about that, which I included in the video, just a little short conversation. Grok pointed out that no, the comparison is not accurate. The Plasco building and the World Trade Center Building 7 have different structural designs, fire conditions, and collapse mechanisms. Plasco's collapse was a progressive failure due to prolonged fire exposure, while WTC-7's collapse involved unique factors like debris impact from the Twin Towers and internal structural failures, as detailed in NIST's investigation. Honestly, this is interesting, but I'm still skeptical of the whole thing. At first glance, the two don't seem comparable. I'll have to look into it further, but why even bring up Plasco if the circumstances are so different?
What is the other theory which we should give more credence to?
I don't know. I don't know that the onus is on me or anyone who seeks the truth about what happened to come up with an alternative theory. The onus is on federal authorities to explain why, for example, they never investigated it. Why, for example, the rubble and the steel from that building was carted off within hours and sent out of the country to Asia. Why, for example, an analysis done not by kooks, but by chemists found traces of explosive material in the dust from that day. Why structural engineers who have kind of no skin in this game came to the conclusion that that just couldn't happen based on all available evidence. And that none of that is addressed at all or even mentioned in the 9/11 report. So, and there are all kinds of anomalies, as I know that you're fully aware, and there are possible explanations to explain all of them. For example, the BBC report on air saying the building had fallen when it hadn't fallen yet. There are all sorts of reasons to wonder, like, what the hell is this? But it's not incumbent on us to provide explanation. It's incumbent on the people running the government and running the supposed investigation into this to tell us, like, what was that?
Okay, so I find this interesting. I don't know if you guys remember, but Pierce started off earlier by highlighting this shift in how people are beginning to identify not the old left-right divide, but two new camps, the camp of those who question the narrative and those sticking with it. I find it interesting because we can clearly see this divide playing out in real time. Tucker aligns with the questioning camp, the camp that challenges the institutions feeding us all this information. Pierce, on the other hand, seems to lean toward the camp that accepts the official 9/11 story as true, or at least that's my guess. That's what I'm picking up from him. You can see Pierce pushing back on Tucker, raising counterpoints like this, the collapse of the tower, trying to challenge his perspective, which is fine. It's all and well. But I mean, I feel like it is a bad comparison. The fact that the building collapse Pierce used to compare with what happened on 9/11 with Building 7 is just a shitty comparison, if you ask me. I mean, based off what I've seen, it just doesn't seem like they're the same. It's kind of hard, though. It's hard to pin down Pierce. He often plays both sides. He likes to fence it, not quite at Bill Maher level grifting, but he's definitely getting close. Tucker brought up some interesting points. He said chemists found explosive material in the dust from the 9/11 buildings, which I looked into it, and I've heard that before, but I just went and double checked, and I went ahead and put in the video. I provided direct evidence of this peer-reviewed study where thermite was discovered in the World Trade Center dust by a team of PhD scientists. Their peer-reviewed study can be found at benthamopenarchives.com. And I also provided that in the video. It's a primary source. It's primary source information. Tucker also says that structural engineers argue the official story of 9/11 doesn't add up physically.
What could not have happened is this.
A little tiny chunk of the building can't possibly fall and crush the entire structure below it.
This is such a simple, fundamental concept that architects and engineers were astonished in seeing it totally ignored by NIST.
This is high school physics, and our whole society is being led to believe that these fundamental laws of physics, hard science, don't apply anymore.
What's interesting is none of this made it into the official 9/11 Commission report, which is what we've been fed as the official story. Then there's the BBC report who announced that a building had collapsed before it actually did. And this is all in real time on 9/11, which is absolutely insane.
The interesting thing is that at 10 p.m. London time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they reported that the Solomon Brothers building, Building 7, had collapsed. The only problem is Building 7 didn't collapse until 5:20 p.m. New York time.
As you can see behind me, the Trade Center.
Building 7 is clearly visible right behind the reporter. It wasn't until 5:20 Eastern time that it came down.
Tucker then says it's the federal government's job to answer these questions for the American people, not the other way around. So yeah, this is some interesting stuff. Let's keep rolling and see what Pierce says.
I mean, look, I have a very open mind. The reason I'm interested to watch your documentary series, I have a genuinely open mind, and actually, I would say it's been more opened generally about this kind of thing since the COVID pandemic. That I was too, I think, credulous about
sure.
what the authorities were saying through the pandemic to my detriment. You and I have had this conversation. So I'm actually have a very open mind about this. I mean, on the specifics, for example, the BBC report you mentioned was based on a false Reuters report that they retracted soon afterwards and said it shouldn't have gone out. And the building, you could see the building behind the BBC journal. So it was obviously ludicrous. CNN did the same thing.
Yeah, so if you notice right there, that's Piers acknowledging that the BBC and that reporter did report on Building 7 falling inaccurately. And still, that doesn't answer the question of how the heck did they find that information, or did they have that information to even do so? He also did add that CNN did the same thing, which is actually true. And if I remember correctly, CNN reported on it before BBC, and BBC might have been just acting out of the information that they found, that they got from CNN, if I remember correctly.
But having been in the news game as you have, on big breaking news stories, fog of war stuff happens. And if it was a genuine error by Reuters, okay. I remember, for example, just as a comparison, I remember being on air at CNN when the hurricane came through, Hurricane Sandy burst through Manhattan. I don't know if you were probably at Fox then, I think. But if you remember, half the lights went out in Lower Manhattan. And I remember a report coming from CNN that the stock exchange was underwater, and that had an immediate impact on global markets. And
okay, Reuters or whoever he is referring to that inaccurately reported on Wall Street being underwater, and the BBC reporter reporting on Tower 7 falling 20 minutes before it actually falls is absolutely not even close in comparison. I mean, maybe if Wall Street would have eventually been found underwater, okay, but the whole point, the pressing question, the issue here is, how did these people have this information to report on before it ever happened? And then if you're going to try to say it's just an accident, I mean, what is the mathematical probability that someone accidentally reports on a building collapsing and falling at free fall speed before it ever happens, and then 20 minutes later it actually happens? I mean, if that doesn't raise questions, I don't know what to tell you.
So is it cock up, or do you think there is merit to suggestion that some people somewhere must have known more than we've been told?
Well, we know that people did know more than we've been told. I mean, somebody shorted the airlines and a bunch of the banks that were affected. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's not a guess. This is publicly available information. Now, the FBI found out the identity of the person or institution that shorted these events on 9/11 and made a huge amount of money by doing that, but never released that information. So why can't we know who clearly had foreknowledge? I mean, if you're shorting American Airlines a week before 9/11, when no one knows it's coming, I think you should have to explain why you did that. And if you're shorting Barclays and banks that were affected by 9/11, why can't we know who you are? These are public markets, by the way. This is not private equity. This is publicly traded equities. So I wonder about that. So clearly, yes, there was foreknowledge.
I was surprised by this information. I had no clue till Tucker just pointed it out. I did a quick search and found in the days leading up to 9/11, there were major spikes in put options on United and American Airlines stocks. The SEC launched investigations into these trades, looking at a range of stocks, airlines, insurers, financial firms that showed unusual activity around this time. They found no evidence of foreknowledge was tied to the attacks, which is interesting because that seems to clash with what Tucker's saying right now. So Tucker is making some pretty bold claims. And if the FBI really has information on who made these trades, which I'm sure they made billions when they did it at least, I think they should probably share this and come clean with the information. I mean, this whole thing is wild. Everything Tucker's saying right now is pretty crazy.
By the way, there was a team, this is according to the FBI, by the way, this is the FBI saying, there was a team of clearly intel-connected foreigners who were arrested after 9/11, as you well know, videotaping the terror attacks. I'm almost verbatim quoting from the FBI assessment of this. And the FBI determined that they apparently had foreknowledge of the attacks. So why can't we know more about that? Exactly. Shut up. That's bigoted. No, this is my country, actually. I know people who died on 9/11. Everything was changed because of it. I promptly went off to the Middle East just like everyone else in our business. I'm sure you did as well. And then we lost our civil liberties at home. We immediately started torturing people and locking up people for years. They are still locked up in Guantanamo Bay with no charges at all. And the rest of us, very much me included, nodded our heads and are like, yeah, they're bad. They're Muslim terrorists. Now, I think a lot of them were bad, and they were Muslim terrorists. On the other hand, if your government is allowed to torture people and lock them up indefinitely without charging them, how long before they do that to you? We don't do that here. And I know it's very common in the UK now, which is an authoritarian country. We don't want that here. And 9/11 dramatically changed our assumptions about what the government is allowed to do. So, and by the way, I should say, the main beneficiary in the United States of those attacks was the CIA.
Okay, so Tucker's making a lot of good points about who benefited most from 9/11 and how ever since it's just been a huge infringement on Americans' rights, whether it's the Patriot Act or the many other ways that they violate our Fourth Amendment by invading our privacy through various different ways and stuff like this. So I can totally agree where he's coming from and think all these things he's talking about need a lot more attention, need a lot more eyes on them. People need to do their own research and think critically about this stuff. Also, so Charlie Kirk has just been shot, and I have a couple other things going on. So what I'm going to do is, and keep Charlie Kirk in your prayers. I think it has been announced that he's officially passed, which is horrible to see. I didn't agree with him on everything, but I mean, he's a good guy and he had a family and 2 kids. So this is just absolutely devastating. Words can't explain how sad this is. So I'm going to play the last like 8 minutes of this interview where Tucker got into some other subjects and topics that were super, super interesting. But in order for me to look into this other stuff and do a couple other things I'm doing, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this video playing those last 5 to 8 minutes where you guys can hear the end of this interview. And so I hope you guys look into this stuff. Maybe check out Tucker's documentary. I don't even know if he charges money or how much it costs, but if it's free, definitely watch it. I'm going to watch it and check it out. So, all right, guys, thanks for tuning in again. And if you like everything you heard and saw, please like, comment, subscribe, and can't wait to see you guys next time.
Little boats to come over the channel, delivering tens of thousands of people illegally into the country. And they then get put into these so-called asylum hotels where they're given a pretty good lifestyle. Certainly a far better lifestyle than many people really struggling at the moment in the UK. And of course, far from smashing the gangs, it turned out yesterday that he's smashing new records for the number of people coming in illegally on the boats.
Of course.
It's out of control. And the British
legally,
public are reaching a point of
So,
saying,
like,
we are done with people coming in illegally and being treated better in a more comfortable and more luxurious manner than we treat our own people.
Well, the whole point is to humiliate and degrade the indigenous population of the British Isles, the white population. I mean, that's the whole point. And are they really going to do something about it? What would that be exactly? You'd really have to force a lot of people to go back to their countries of origin, millions of people, and you need to do it really soon. And are they actually willing to do that? I don't know. But these are existential questions that we have been browbeat into ignoring for decades. But the question is like, is Ireland Ireland? If it's majority non-Irish? Oh, shut up, they're Irish. No, they're actually not Irish. Same with the UK, same with England, Scotland, Wales. Like, it's all changing so fast. Nothing like this has ever happened in all of history, except when, say, the Mongols swept across the steppe and raped everybody. Like, that was true demographic change on this scale. But even that wasn't as profound as what we're seeing in every white country around the world. I would say the West, but Australia and New Zealand also. So, like, what is that? Now, my brain is not big enough to understand what that is. I have a lot of theories about it, but I don't know if they're true. All I know is what the numbers are. And that's real. And no one feels that he can say it. Everyone's like, oh, well, if that were happening in China or India or Malaysia or Senegal, it doesn't matter. You'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, the population's totally different. Look at graduation. Pick, I don't know, King's College Law School, and look at the graduation picture for the last 30 years. Who's in it? Just like, let your eyes tell you the truth for once. Like, this is a total change in population. Is it better? Is it worse? Can't have that conversation. Who's pushing this? Does the population want it? The population clearly doesn't want it. There's no polling that's meaningful on the subject. I mean, there's no referendum on it. You don't get to decide. You've got no voice in it other than you get to go to jail if you complain loudly enough about it. What is this? I think it's the biggest and darkest thing that has happened in the last 1,000 years, for sure. And I think it's leading somewhere really, really bad. It's not happening by accident. That's obvious because it's only happening in white countries.
I mean, I think that...
Oh, shut up, white supremacist. Well, in fact, I'm not a white supremacist.
Well,
I'm just noticing what the hell's going on.
I think most people I've spoken to about this in the UK, most people have always viewed the UK to be a very tolerant, multicultural, cosmopolitan place to live. That's why so many people want to come here. And people have no problem with that. And it's been very successful for a long period of time.
Wait, it's multicultural? What does that mean?
We have a lot of different people from different countries, different cultures, and it's always worked historically.
So is Sharia law in a multicultural country, is Sharia law every bit as valid as English common?
No, people don't want Sharia law here. No.
A lot of people do. Wait, but hold on. I don't know what you mean. Multiculturalism itself is a lie designed to subvert a society. No, a society has a culture. You can argue about what it is or ought to be. It's not necessarily the same as race. It's connected to race, but it's not the same. People from different races can buy into your culture. That was kind of the beauty of the West. But a multicultural society is not sustainable. There's never been such a thing.
Your society is
one culture will dominate.
Hang on, Tucker. Surely the United States of America, given the very way it was created, is the epitome of a multicultural society. And my point I was going to make to you was...
It's absolutely not. No. It's a multiracial society.
Yeah.
Though it was not actually a multiracial society up until pretty recent. It was just like 90% white for most of its existence, but whatever. But you did have different peoples, you had different religions. That was all totally fine, but there was one culture, as American culture. There's no such thing as a multicultural society. It's not sustainable. One culture will overwhelm the other. Again, it's not the same as race. It's not identical to race. It's connected, but it's not the same. But multiculturalism is by definition insane. No, it's never happened. It never will happen. One culture will predominate. It will impose its values on everybody else. I mean, the gay thing, which was not a thing 40 years ago, gay was a slur, all of a sudden becomes mandatory to worship at the altar of gayness or whatever. Trans stuff, sodomy, pride, all this stuff. That was not a thing 40 years ago. We're the same age. You know that. It was reviled. Now it's beloved. That's a culture change, but it's not multicultural.
I don't think you can't
dissent. You can't dissent from it.
Yeah, but
you're not allowed to dissent from it. If you're like, actually, I think sodomy's wrong. How does that work for you?
Look,
you go to jail in your country.
Well, what's happened with the gay thing, as you put it, is that actually we were an extremely homophobic society. It was only legal to be gay from the mid-60s in the United Kingdom, and I'm very glad I now live in a country where it's perfectly legal to do that.
No, so you buy the culture. You buy, okay,
it's not
I'm
a culture.
Not even
I buy
attacking
people's
that.
right.
You obviously
I buy people's right to have their own sexuality. My argument with the trans...
but that's never happened. That's never happened in the history of your country.
Well, the trans debate's different to the gay debate.
It's not different. It's not.
It is.
No, it's not. Look, I'm not attacking gays. I'm not attacking trans. I'm making a larger point that I know that you are capable of grasping, which is that these are cultural determinations. We decide what our culture is, what are our values. And that definition changes. So your country, let's just say its inception, modern England, 1066. The Normans come in, the French, who are actually Norse, but whatever, they come in, they invade your country, they impregnate your women, they put themselves in charge, they take all the castles. That's 1,000 years, okay? During that entire period, it was not okay to be gay until, as you said, 1966 or whatever. Oscar Wilde went to jail for it. So you have 1,000 years versus 60 years. Your culture changed, but there's only one culture. It went from being totally unacceptable to be gay to being mandatory to love gays.
It wasn't mandatory to love gays.
There's no multi in that.
It's not mandatory to love gays.
It is absolutely mandatory to love gays.
You can have a view.
Really? What would happen? What would happen if you stood up in Parliament or on a television show in Great Britain and said, basically just describe what the average Victorian or even Edwardian thought of homosexuality? Or just read Oscar Wilde's indictment but agreed with it. You'd lose your job. You might go to jail. There is not a multicultural there. There's one culture. And it's required. And that's true in every society because a culture is a commonly agreed upon set of values, which in their firmest form are called laws.
But those values can evolve.
This is true everywhere
But
all the
those
time.
values can evolve.
Of course they evolve, but there's only one set of them. It's not multicultural. There's one set.
Yes,
you worship one God in every society.
Hang on.
Sorry.
But your country's values were established by the United States Constitution, and that's had, 26, 27 amendments? Right? So your own values, as determined by the Founding Fathers, they have evolved and been changed to accommodate changing times.
There's no doubt. Look, I'm not even arguing against change. That's natural. It's natural that people's views evolve.
So the culture changes
Once you
with
start
it.
rejecting the laws of nature, then you're doomed. But let me just say, no, of course, societies change. I get it. All I'm saying, I'm making a very discrete, specific point, which is multiculturalism as an idea is laughably stupid. It has never worked. We never had it anywhere, and it never will exist because it's contrary to human nature. One culture, one way of looking at things, one worldview will predominate, and it will punish all who deviate from it. That is the nature of societies. So if you're telling me it's multicultural, we can all live and have radically different values, that's just not true. It's never been true. It never will be true. So you're having one culture, one worldview predominate over another and dominate and suppress all dissent. That's just what it is, dude.
But
Let's be honest.
I would point to the United States of America and the United Kingdom as two shining examples, albeit not completely without their flaws, but shining examples of places that are deemed by the rest of the world to be not only multicultural, but very tolerant of other people's cultures in a way that has enriched their society. I certainly feel that about my country.
Well, I certainly think that inherent in Christianity is the notion of tolerance, and that draws from a core Christian concept, which is free will. You cannot force someone to convert. There's never been conversion by the sword in Christianity. People decide to believe in it. And so that is central to the religion, therefore it's been central to the society. Western civilization is Christian civilization, and so we call that tolerance. It's a respect for your inherent God-given right to make a choice about what you believe. Okay, so of course, that's always been a feature. My only point is, a society has a commonly agreed upon set of beliefs, rules, and laws that are the definition of the society itself. That's what a society is. So you can't have competing. You can't have, gay world and Sharia world living co-equally in a society. That does not happen. It will never happen. You have to pick one. Are we the Sharia society? Are we the party time gay rights society? Which one? And you can't face that reality. So you're just sort of snoozing along until the inevitable point where you're going to wake up and be like, my values have no bearing on what our society is anymore because we've been invaded by other people with a totally different worldview, and they're now in charge. And that day is coming very soon for your country, and maybe it'll improve it. I don't think the UK could be a lot worse than it already is. It's this kind of disgusting, sad, self-hating, suicidal island that was once great. It kills me to see it as a half-English person. But that day is coming. It will change. You will either decide to be Western or Eastern. That's a choice that we're all going to face. I don't want to face that choice, but it's being foisted upon us by the architects of mass migration. Sorry.
I would question your characterization as my country as a sad, disgusting, what was the rest of it, suicidal nation. I feel none of those things. I feel very happy to be in the United Kingdom, and I feel that there are lots of very happy people like me who are neither disgusting or sad or suicidal. But Tucker Carlson, it is always great to talk to you.
I agree with that.
I would like to remind
Piers Morgan,
my viewers that your 9/11 documentary series, the first episode is posted...
9/11, aptly so.
Yeah.